Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Free Hit, an FPL podcast. I'm your host, Jace. Chris is out of the office this week, getting that final rest before the season gets underway, but we've got a special guest to replace him. That's right. For the first time in Free Hit history, we've got a guest, Mauricio Salazar-Lozada from the Offside Onside blog. Mauricio, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, my name is Mauricio. I am a data analyst for Offside Onside. So this is a blog that we've started with a couple of friends, and mainly we're trying to get into basically deep analysis, tactical analysis of football. So we'll be covering a couple of leagues, mainly the Serie A, but also, of course, the EPL and hopefully La Liga as well. Thank you so much, Jace, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, and hopefully some of my insights will be favorable for your listeners. And
absolutely, yeah. Draft. We've got Chris is a Chelsea supporter, and I'm a Tottenham supporter, so it'll be nice to have an objective, unbiased view here, seeing as you're more of a supporter in the Serie A. So tell us a little bit about how you came to wanting to do the analytics behind football. What was the driver behind starting the Offside Onside blog? How'd you get here?
Yeah, so I think for most of us, or for a lot of us, I think these side gigs and side things that we're doing now are a product of interest that kind of developed during COVID. So while a lot of people were into trading cryptocurrencies, I started getting into fantasy football and also analytics. So basically, I began to enter in this community of football analysts and on Twitter, which is pretty vast, and it's a great community because they share a lot of insight and a lot of code as well, which I think in a lot of industries is kind of a no-no, because that's where kind of your business advantage comes from, So that's how I kind of got into football analytics, but I was missing basically the technical skills to actually develop it. And that's why I did my master's in data analytics. This allowed me, or gave me, the tools to basically analyze games and go through data and be able to actually bring out some meaningful output. So yeah, that's basically how I started, and now I feel that finally I have those skills to actually implement them on a blog or for a specific team or anything like that. So it's nice, I feel like I can finally be a part of this community and finally produce something that is
a little less imposter syndrome, I guess, here. When you get your bona fides, like a master's in data analytics. It's funny because you mentioned COVID, but I remember during COVID, I got really into sports betting with my co-host, Chris, who's like a savant at it. Okay. I'm more of an emotional hedger. I always bet on Tottenham to lose. That way, if they do, I at least get some money out of it, But Chris is actually pretty good, but he recommended a book to me called The Signal and the Noise by Nate Silver. I'm sure you've heard of it at least as on the data side, but that was kind of what opened my eyes to the data analytics side and in a little bit more, as you mentioned, more meaningful reasons and things you can assign to your everyday life, like football or FPL, right? So it's cool that you actually went back and kind of did something about it. So where'd you do your master's at?
I did it, here in Paris. The school's called Polytechnique. Yeah. So it gave me, it was a bit weird at first, taking classes in French. Well, we took a couple of classes in French. Okay. And most of them were in English, but still it was kind of a learning curve, trying to learn, I don't know, I don't know how to use Python with someone speaking to you in French, and it's just like, what,
Yeah, it's funny.
what are we doing here?
My company we've got a couple offices in Nantes in France, and I do the Salesforce development side, and I set all their profiles to French. So when I log in, it is weird seeing all of the like nomenclature and stuff in French, and I'm just like, oh wait, this is not as easy as I thought it would be. So I can't imagine taking a whole course.
Yeah, yeah. It is a bit mind-boggling, but you got used
Yeah.
to
So
it
now you
after a while.
got the Offside Onside blog full time. What are you guys' release schedule there? Is it kind of as the content comes up? Do you do kind of weekly releases? Give us the.
Yeah, so and during the summer we kind of did this I don't know, a prototype of how we're gonna manage our blog. Basically, we did that with the Olympics. So we came out with a piece after every round. Although I think this is something that maybe will change in the future because, as I said, we want to get into more like the meaningful side and big ideas instead of just covering matches. For example, I think you can see on our blog that there was an article I wrote about Thiago Motta and his kind of playing style, and how at the time, I mean, it wasn't announced that he would be Juventus's new manager, but basically how he's trying to revolutionize the game through his playing style. So I think we're trying to go more into that direction of looking at bigger ideas and not just honing into like the numbers, and seeing how the numbers connect to the actual.
Yeah, that's great. It really adds to, I think, the experience of watching football in general. We Spurs hired Ange Postecoglou last season, and there's a ton of Twitter content around him just as a leader and as a statistician, and you see kind of his play style and his philosophy and all that. So you get a little bit more into the details and not just the surface level of like he likes to attack. Okay, well, how does he like to attack? Right. Well, he loves inverting his outside backs, right, and getting them involved in the attack and creating overflows on one side and all that. And you get a philosophy around it, like Ange Ball, right? And you have all these different philosophies around the different managers, which is really cool. Before we get started, there was one manager I was reading, I forget his name, but he believed instead of looking at a formation from front to back or back to front, he goes from left to right. Is like he plays like a 1-2-5-2-1 or whatever, and then you're like, people were making fun of him, but I forget his name, but like
I mean, no,
it's Thiago Motta. Yeah,
I think
okay,
Thiago Motta. Yeah. I think he wrote about it during his like UEFA.
They all have to have a thesis before they get their professional license. Otherwise, they get fined if they don't have that license, right? Because there was that football manager guy in Germany. They were paying like 30,000 euros a month because of the fines for a game or something like that. It was crazy, but he kept winning. So, but yeah, it was cool to see how people can take what we see as like traditional football, and just by looking at it slightly differently, it opens up this whole other world of tactical formations and approaches to the game that is the world's oldest game, but somehow we continue to be able to reinvent it no matter how much FIFA tries to prevent that from happening, but I digress. Well, to start, Mauricio is going to help us walk through introducing our listeners to the new managers in the Premier League this season, and he's going to speak a little bit about their tactical approaches and how that can relate to generating more FPL points, which players are going to benefit, and we'll talk briefly about the promoted teams as well. But before we get into the content, don't forget to join our mini league. The code is Z or Z for those of you that use that letter. D is in dog, TLNG. That's ZDTLNG. All right. So, Mauricio, let's get into the new managers. First up, I think, is most importantly the big question mark, just because of kind of the status of the club and whose shoes he's going to try and fill. It's Arne Slot at Liverpool. What are your thoughts on this move for our Liverpool fans out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Arne Slot is a really modern coach. I think he brings sort of, this pep centered idea of attacking and attacking with purpose while keeping possession. Um, Arne Slot, yeah, I mean, during his time at Feyenoord, he introduced a lot of interesting ideas. For example, like in the low build up phase, introducing a 3-3-2-3 formation, which includes basically the goalkeeper as one of the center backs, which I think is something that is getting more and more prominent in the game, because also, and like we talked about, Thiago Motta also does that and tries to push one of his defenders up the field into more of a pivotal role while keeping the goalkeeper as one of the pass lanes in the back line. So I think Arne Slot is, yeah, he's a great pick. I think he's not super well known, which kind of gives him the liberty of, introducing his ideas without having. I mean, he has a lot of pressure coming into the side, but it's also like a breath of fresh air. I think most fans aren't like and don't exactly know what Arne Slot's philosophy is. So it'll be interesting for their first game, as to see.
Yeah,
how
so you think Allison's going to have the ball at his feet a little more in this formation? So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, he has to. He has to. I think that's the thing. Like, I think it's if you play with a goalkeeper that doesn't have the technical ability in today's game, I mean, you're
yeah.
playing with one less player, because that's the whole philosophy around it, right? It's like, how can we increase the numerical advantage that we have on the field,
And that comes
with the
from, like you
players that
said,
we have.
pulling the
So
goalkeeper up, inverting your fullbacks like Pasacaglu does to get him into the midfield, things like that. So a couple of things
mhm.
from the FPL side, they have the BPS, which is the bonus point system, and completed passes is a factor in that. And you saw that with center backs like Christian Romero and with even the whole Tottenham backline, because Vicario did get forward and they wanted the ball a lot more. So Romero and him passed the ball between each other a lot more, which equated to more bonus points, right? So that's something, if you're looking for a
Yeah.
goalkeeper that's going to be higher in that BPS with Arnie Slot's system, we can expect Allison to have the ball more. Is he a very defensive coach?
No, I think that's one of the things that I would say. I think looking at it from a fantasy point of view, I think defensively maybe it's not the best system to have for getting clean sheets and things like that. But I mean, looking at like your wingers and maybe some of the midfielders that can get up the field, I think it's a great system to have. I mean, today, like you saw, I don't know if you saw the game today. Liverpool beat who was it, 4-1. But you saw like Diaz and Salah moving wide and coming in with the ball at their feet. And I think Diaz scored twice and was able to get that position and take on players. So that's the thing. I think like it benefits a lot in the offensive role of this team. I don't know if defensively it'll be a lot, but I didn't know that pass completion was part of
I
the
feel like
BPS
as a data analytics
calculation
guy,
system.
you could have a field day with all the complications of the BPS system. It's like passes completed and all this other
Yeah,
crap that I think it's just made to give Saka bonus points every week because somehow he always ends up with 3 even if he doesn't do anything. But I digress. It's interesting because at slot at Feyenoord, he had Santi Jimenez, and he was kind of the key to their offense, right? It was getting the ball out wide and then crossing the ball in and letting him finish. Do you see that benefiting Nunez or Gakpo at all in that center forward role, depending on who gets that? I feel like he plays a bit like Bielsa in that. Like there's a high focus on getting the wingers up the field and the ball into the box, which is, essentially football in a nutshell. But Nunez had a lot of success with him in the Copa America through that route. And I mean, Luis Diaz was one of the players of the tournament, I feel like, in the Copa America. So I feel like those two players, depending on how the lineup shakes out, could really benefit from slot system differently than how Klopp was set up, right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing with this like new system that you have. I mean, the obvious example is
everybody's a Pepophile these days. Haaland. Like Ange Postecoglou, like Slot, Goretzka, they're all in this school of Pep Guardiola. That they're the bald frauds, as they're called, or whatever. I mean, it's just it's like when you're like, oh, I like Bob Dylan. Like, yeah, of course, everybody likes Bob Dylan. He's a savant. Like that's just how it. But it continue. Go ahead.
No, I think I mean Pep kind of sets the tempo for these tactical changes, and I mean. I remember playing FIFA and looking at formations such as like a 4-2-4 and just being like, okay, well, nobody is going to play this ever again. I mean, they might have played this formation back in the 60s, but somehow Pep has been able to bring back this philosophy of, okay, you have to attack with large numbers. But I mean, he does it in a way that he's able to maintain positioning, which is important for counterattacks. And I think that's the thing with Arne Slot. I think his formations fluctuate depending on the opposing team's stance. So, for example, if the opposing team has two players or two strikers, then he'll change to a backline of three instead of a backline of two in those high build-up phases. So I think that's what kind of makes Arne Slot a bit interesting, is that I think while during the game he asks his players to read basically what the opponent is doing and kind of modify their positioning depending on that. But yeah, I think for Nunez, for Gakpo, I don't know if Gakpo will play.
That was one of my questions. Is we have this vacancy at the 10 because Klopp didn't really play with a 10, right? But Slot does play with a traditional 10. From what I gather. So who fills that role? Is it a Harvey Elliott? They haven't really signed anyone. I know they've got their eyes on one or two players, but at the end of the day, who fills that gap as a 10? Is it Trent? Does he pull him out of the wing, out of his fullback position and put him in the midfield like Southgate tried to do in the Euros? What do you think his plan there is?
I think it's hard to know now. At the moment, I know against Man United in this preseason, he played with Harvey Elliott and Jones.
Curtis Jones cannot be the full time 10, right? Like that. He's not that caliber player, right?
But then you got to think like maybe he'll bring in McAllister to.
He played that role really well with Brighton. I know he played more of a 6 with Liverpool, right? And he sat back a little more, but he did play that. That's a good point. Yeah. I didn't even think about that, but McAllister did play that 10 role for Brighton. I'm
a huge supporter of McAllister. I think like his football IQ is super high. I mean, a good example of that was like
I was going to say an Argentine with the last name of McAllister. You got to have your football IQ has to be out through the roof, right? Like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was the first goal. I'm not sure, or maybe the second goal where McAllister is able to take that space and take a shot, but instead he squares it to Di Maria, and I think that's what you want from a number 10. Simple play. Being able to find his teammates in these positions. So I think McAllister would be a great option. Harvey Elliott maybe, but I think he would run more of like a 6 role, which is basically box to box. And that's the thing. In the game against Man United, you saw, for example, for the second goal, Bradley kind of beat his marker and then found. I mean, I know you don't rate him high enough, but he found Curtis Jones in the midfield and in the box, and he just finished it off. And I think you'll see that a lot with the box-to-box midfielder, whoever it is for Liverpool, crashing into the box. And then you'll have McAllister just kind of dictating the tempo of play while in those high
I'm not going to use a preseason friendly with a back line like United's, who gave up more goals than their entire history last season as a benchmark. But I take your point. I think it's fair. I think it's really interesting what you brought up about Slot and that he changes depending on who he plays, because I think that's a characteristic that not a lot of managers have these days. I feel like players like Maresca, or managers like Maresca, Postecoglou, Ten Hag, like I think they're very unyielding in their play style, and they are just like, no, we're gonna play. We're gonna, and says it all the time, we're gonna play our way, and that is to their detriment. I think there's a certain appreciation in the football community for a manager who, from at least supporters, who recognizes, okay, maybe my formation is not the best way. Maybe I need to change it up, and based on who we're playing. Right, against the promoted teams, you can probably enforce your style play on someone. But when you're going against City, Liverpool, any of the big six, you probably have to make a few accommodations here and there, right? Just out of the fact that they're really good football teams.
Yeah. And they have quality players that can, No, of course. I think that's a dilemma that Klopp kind of fell into. I don't know if it was last season where at the start of the season, his team was playing kind of flat-footed, and but he wasn't playing with those inverted fullbacks, and he wasn't. I feel like his tactics weren't up to date. But then as the season progressed, I mean, he started involving those type of tactics, which, at the end of the day, I mean, improve your team a lot. And if you're going to play against teams like Man City, you need to be to understand the game in a modern way, So yeah, I think Arne Slot, I mean, he's definitely a disciple of, looking at how a team or his opponents play and kind of trying to modify the way that his team plays. But I think at the end of the day, his tactics kind of stay the same, which is, we want to get the most numbers up, and in these transitions, we're going to try to create a triangular play, which is to have passing lanes to multiple sides of each player. And I think that's why he plays with, the three backs, and he pushes his fullbacks into the midfield, and he has his goalkeeper as one of the main passing lanes.
Do you think his foundation is based on still the Dutch style of total football? Making those midfield triangles, getting the overloads, and all that. So fair enough, Mauricio. Who 3 players we want to watch out for from the FPL side in Arne Slot's formation? Alisson's going to have the ball more at his feet. You said Luis Diaz coming in, taking up those positions. I think the only thing with Diaz is his end product was missing a lot last season, but he had a hell of a Copa America. And I kind of back him between him and Jota to put some goals in this season, just based on like you said, the positions they're going to take up. Now, who gets that spot? I think it's tough because you've got Salah, you've got Jota, you've got Gakpo, Nunez, Luis Diaz, all really quality attackers, but he's only going to be able to play with 3 of those. So you're going to have to watch out for play time. Who's the third player we want to watch in Arne Slot's system?
Third player. I would say you would want to watch out for one of those
box players. You think it's like McAllister, Harvey?
They're going to get a lot of They're going to get. I think they're going to be in positions with high expected goals, just because as you said, the game is going to open wide for Liverpool as they build up in those high positions, and then you're going to have either Harvey Elliott or whoever's playing that position crash into the box. So I think that's the thing that I don't know who was it, Bernardo for Man City. I mean, they played. You saw his goal yesterday. Was it? I think. where he gets into the box and then he just capitalizes on a cross, and I think you'll see that a lot with Liverpool and these types of players. So yeah, I don't know who the starting number 6 is going to be for Liverpool, but whoever it is, I think you'll see a lot of goals and assists.
Yeah, I'd be interested to review this kind of after. I think the first international break is going to be a great time to take a look back and see, okay, who are established players, who's in the starting 11, and kind of take these principles that you've mentioned on the positions, not necessarily the player, and see how that shakes out. So speaking of Pep facsimiles, let's move on to Enzo Maresca at Chelsea, who in every way, shape, or form has modeled himself after Pep Guardiola, right? You got the bald head, you've got the scruff beard, the way that he plays. Chelsea. I was at the Chelsea Celtic preseason friendly in Notre Dame here in Indiana a couple weekends ago, and I gotta say, I didn't see the vision of Maresca. And I know it's a preseason friendly, but you're gonna have to help me out here, because Leicester were flying in the championship last season, but everything I've watched of Chelsea, even against Wrexham earlier, I mean, I haven't seen much of anything that I'm like, that I'm excited about. To me, they should have just kept Pochettino if this is how they were going to play. They've signed a lot of players though, so yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in my group chats that I have with friends, everybody's like, what's going on at that club? And I think that's been the story for the past
at least 2 or 3 seasons, right? Like ever since Todd Bailey took over and they had the whole oligarch transition. I
mean the sign Pedro Neto signing is just like, what's going on here? I mean, I could see why they would sign.
Who wouldn't Neto. Really? I mean, he's a great quality player, right?
From a just solely tactical side, I understand why Pedro Neto would be a great player to have, but I mean, when it comes to who's going to play a lot of games, I mean,
he's played in 40% of the games that he's been eligible to play over the last 4 seasons.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, he plays that 40%, but it feels like even less. I mean, because then you have games where he's playing and he gets injured or something.
Right,
and
right.
Technically he played, but at the same time, if you don't play for the rest of the 60 minutes, your presence is just not going to be felt. I mean, Maresca, I mean, he was assistant coach under Pep. He was the manager for Manchester City's EDS side, so I think he does bring a lot of that footballing philosophy. So it kind of similar to Arne Slot, he likes to play with this high line of attackers. But the difference between the two is that he does like to build up in a low block with 4 in the back. This is including the goalkeeper, of course, as one of the center backs. And I think for Chelsea, I mean, it's just if we didn't know who was going to start for Liverpool, I think this is Chelsea is just kind of an open book. They might sign someone tomorrow and that person's going to be the starting left wing or this.
I think there's only one person where you're confident that's going to play every game, and that's Cole Palmer, right? There's no way Maresca can sit a player like Cole Palmer, right? So he's going to feature. The difference is where's he going to play? You know what I mean? You've got Nkunku, you've got Mudryk, you've got Sterling, Nick Jackson, all these players that, like you said, who's going to pick? And now Pedro Neto. So who's going to surround him, right? Who are the players going to be? And are they going to have that cohesion to actually build something, right? Because it took Pochettino the majority of last season to actually get the team to click, right? But by the end of that season, they were playing pretty good football. Maybe I'm biased because of Poch's Spurs days, but I thought he did a good job at getting at kind of weaving that thread of players together, because they have such a huge locker room. I mean, I don't even know where they're going to put all these players,
Yeah. I think, I mean, if we're basing it just off the the preseason matches that they've had. I think Lavia will play a good
Romeo
amount.
Lavia,
I mean,
yeah,
he's
he
been
was injured
playing a
last
lot
season
during
too.
pre.
That's a good point. We didn't get to see him a ton.
Yeah, so I think that could be a player that might be a staple in the team. I think also, I mean, Mudryk has not impressed at all. So I don't know if he'll be like a starting position. But I think Raheem Sterling also has like the ability to shake up defenses, and that's something that you kind of need with players that are playing wide, so that they're able to take on the fullbacks. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an open book. I think what will definitely happen is that, I mean, they want to kind of move away from their dependency on like Reece
Speaking of
James
people who are
and
never
Ben Chilwell.
available,
And I think yeah, exactly. So I think they'll definitely, I mean, this system will kind of move Chelsea in that direction, where they don't need fullbacks that are going up and down the pitch and are able to provide you with like this attacking outlet. But I think, yeah, they'll have inverted fullbacks, so they'll probably want someone or a couple of players that can hold the ball and can pass around.
yeah, I'm just looking at this list of Chelsea players that have joined the team this season. A lot of end of loans, right? Because they do love buying someone just to loan them out for 4 years before they sell them on, which is totally fine. I think it's fair, but you've got just so many. I just don't know how they're all gonna fit in. Who the starting goalkeeper is gonna be? Because if anything like Pep or like Slot, that's going to be an important piece. And I don't think Sanchez is very good with his feet. And even Petrovic last season, he did
Yeah.
really well for being his rookie season. But even I don't think he has got the quality with his feet to play in a system like that.
So who
I have no idea. That's
who do
my
you put
that's my
in
question. I don't know. They signed this new they signed Philip Jorgensen from Villarreal. So maybe he's who they're thinking is
Yeah.
going to fit that mold. But to me, I don't know. I mean, Jurgensen's 22. He played in La Liga. They signed him for $25 million, so maybe he's not right away. I just don't know who has the quality to fit that role in that play style, and how you're not just gonna get pounced on, right, on the counter press.
Yeah, this team is really
Deep is
deep.
one word, yeah.
Looking at their roster, it's just like, okay, it kind of looks like, I don't know, like
It really
American
does, and it
football
doesn't
team,
surprise you.
with them.
Yeah, they signed an
Like,
American, Caleb Wiley from Atlanta
um,
United. He's a left back. I'm sure they're gonna do what Arsenal did with what's his name last season and just loan him and then sell him and make their money. I doubt he sees the field, but still.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I think the past few seasons have been like that for Chelsea. I mean, to a point where you just don't know who's going to be the starting 11, and I think this season it's the same. Yeah, as you said, Cole Palmer, yeah, he'll probably be the only like for sure starter, but I mean, even in that striking position, I mean, you have Broja, you have Lukaku.
Yeah, do they stay? Do they go out on loan before the transfer window shuts?
I mean, Nicholas Jackson
Yeah,
is out, right? I mean,
it's tough.
so
I
yeah,
think
I don't
that's
know.
really the players they've signed in the locker room really affects the effectiveness of this conversation, right? Affects the effectiveness. I need to learn to talk. It really affects the quality of this conversation because Maresca, I think, is a really good manager, but we've seen it before where, like, look at Vincent Company last season. Burnley were flying in the championship, right? And he comes to the Premier League and he's unwilling to bend in the first half of the season. And by the time he makes those adjustments, Burnley are playing good football, but it's too late by then, right? But now he's the manager of
Yeah,
Bayern Munich, so sometimes you fail upward, I guess. But
yeah,
um, I'm a little concerned that the personnel are going to be an issue for Maresca. I mean, how do you just managing that many personalities, playtime, right? All that stuff. No one wants to sit the bench, but I don't have any Chelsea players in my FPL team
yeah,
right now for that reason because A, Cole Palmer is too expensive, and B, I just don't know who's going to start. I think Nkunku is great value. I think he can really excel. I saw him score a penalty at that Celtic match. I've seen him get on the end of some really good balls here in the preseason. So I like him a lot, but I'm just not convinced of the Bailey project here. So that's why I'm a little concerned. And I don't really know how to have a constructive conversation around personnel specifically with all the question marks there are,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it all comes down to like playing style and I mean how Maresca is going to piece together the squad, right? I mean, and Kunku is definitely a great player, but where do you put him? I mean, you can put him in the striker position, but if you want a striker that holds up the ball and is able to play off other players, I mean, he might not be the best option. Right?
And that was the one thing Jackson was good at last season, right? Was the hold up play, but Sterling's not going to hold the ball up for you, and Kunku's not going to hold the ball up for you. They want to run in behind.
Yeah, exactly. Are you gonna keep Lukaku just for that reason? Probably not. I mean, that's the thing. So it's like, I mean, like you could even put Nkunku on the left wing or something like that. I think it's such, like you said, it's an open book. I mean, Maresca has a lot of work to do to kind of piece together this team. And it's not clear. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I do have Cole Palmer just because of his efficiency on my fantasy team. But other than that, I'm not even touching that Chelsea squad because I don't know what's gonna.
Yeah, I'm with you. So that'll be an interesting one to revisit, even at the halfway mark, to see how many different lineups he goes with the first half of the season until he finds that one that he gels with. So do you have any other insights on Maresca you want to cover? Any players that you think could shine under him? Maybe not necessarily that will at the start of the season.
I think just because of quality, I think Enzo Fernandez has to be kind of one of the center players in your project. But I mean, other than him and Cole Palmer, maybe you just have to wait and see how this.
Even Enzo had all that controversy in the Copa America. Apparently, he had some pretty angry teammates, but supposedly they've pulled all that stuff to bed. But I'm curious if that'll rear up here.
I mean, how many years are left on his
like
contract?
Another 6, isn't it? I mean, he was like one of the last ones they signed to that crazy long amortization contract. So.
And I think it's with Enzo Maresca, it's the same thing. I mean, he's on a 5-year contract, which is it's pretty.
It's more than they gave Pochettino, and I don't know that they could afford to fire Maresca, even if they're in relegation territory. Here, and you know what I mean. Like, how can you afford to pay out 5 years on a deal? Go hire a new contract, their new manager, while you're still paying for the second to last manager that you fired in Graham Potter because he still hasn't gotten another job, Yeah.
Do you feel that this is like the make or break season kind of for Chelsea, where like if they don't kind of get into a top 4 or like top 6 finish, they might be in this position kind of perpetually?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a make or break point because Chelsea have really lacked consistency, at least over the last 5 seasons. Enzo has played for more managers than he has goals for the club. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of crazy to me. Just for a player of his quality, that's the stat everybody likes to throw around, which is, I think it's just really, really telling. So I think that's a problem. I think they could fade into the mid-table if they don't get that sorted out, because you're going to have players who are unhappy. You have all these long contracts. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, if the players aren't performing, they're not going to retain their value in the market. So you're kind of just stuck with either being upside down, loaning them out perpetually until their contract runs out, which is what Spurs have done for a couple players. You can take that route, but I'm not really concerned because I hate Chelsea, and I'll say it. But I do think I feel bad for their fans just because of that can't be fun to watch. At least Tottenham have been somewhat consistently bottling it for the last 30 years. So I can always count on us to finish close to the top.
We
may not ever win, but we're not getting relegated. Whereas I think Chelsea legitimately could. I mean, you could get a lack of faith. It happened,
Mm-hmm.
not too long ago. I think it was in the early 2000s where they did get relegated and had to come back up. So anyways, that's what I think. We don't have to harp on that anymore, but I appreciate your insights on Maresca. Let's move over to the other side of London at West Ham, where we've got Lopetegui. as their new manager. And he comes from a different school of thought than the last two we've talked about. He's more of a defensive-minded manager, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, talk about someone who fails upwards. I think Lopetegui he's definitely on that list. I mean, with the whole like debacle of being the Spain coach and then signing for Real Madrid and getting fired right when you're already at the World Cup, like what is that? But I mean, in recent seasons, he's done well, right, with Sevilla and Wolves. But as you said, he is more of like a traditionalist. I mean, he plays still with a back line of four, which I mean, not a lot of coaches do nowadays. Well, not a lot of like big team coaches. So yeah, I think he plays like the Spanish way, where he kind of tries to keep a mid block. And that way he's able to circulate the ball, but whenever he loses the ball, be able to pounce on his opponent. So it's kind of like counter pressuring, and it kind of enables his team to regain possession quickly. I think that was basically his best point when he was at Wolves and Sevilla. And then you also have his one thing that I do think that he'll probably do, or he might do, and this is something that I saw also on the FPL analytics, which is run by the basically the FPL, the Fantasy Premier League site.
FPL Towers, yeah.
Yeah. They were saying that he'll probably actually transform Cornet into left back, which I think would be a great idea. But since he played in that position with Lyon in 2020, 2021, and I think that would give the team a bit more of like, one of those flying fullbacks that is able to join in on the attack and kind of provide you with that outlet. So I think it'll be interesting to see how Lopetegui kind of lines up. I think a lot of people have this vision of West Ham, and I think it'll change. Not drastically, but it'll definitely change to what they've been playing in the past few couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, he's stepping into some big shoes as well. I know, maybe West Ham. Maybe they didn't end like he'd have wanted it to, but he won him a trophy. You know what I mean? So those are some big shoes to fill. And they've made some good signings this offseason as well. Even in the last couple of seasons, they've got some good players. And you've got Pagata, you've got Kudus, Volkrieg, who's coming over from the Bundesliga, who's a pretty good attacking player. So I think they're trying to put something together. You've got your stalwart and Jared Bowen, Somerville, right? He was a Leeds player, and played really well for him in the championship. So they put a pretty good team together. I think my concerns are probably around their defense, right? They just sent Zuma off to Saudi, right? They sold him. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but they sold him on International Cat Day, which
oh wow,
tell me,
is that a coincidence?
There's got to be proof there's a God, right? Like, come on, that's too funny.
That's too good. I did not know that, actually. I had no idea that they did that.
Yeah, pretty great. So, but they've got a lot of new players, and you've got James Ward-Prowse, who's your set piece specialist. So I think they've got the makings of a pretty decent team. I think they could make a run for at least top 7 this season if everything goes well.
Yeah, I mean, the guy that's they got Kelman, right? They signed Kelman, which is a solid signing, and also Todibo in the past, I think, week. So, and I'm actually kind of mad about that, since I'm a Juventus fan. They just kind of swooped in and took Todibo off our hands, but like as you say, I think I don't think they'll be the most exciting squad to watch. They're not going to play like this amazing revolutionary football, but I think they'll get they'll get basically the score line that they need, and they'll probably score a few goals in each game, but they'll hold a lot of clean sheets. I mean, as Wolves did in the last season, and I think that's what Lopetegui is gonna kind of harp on. That's his vision, and I mean, hopefully I think I have a couple of West Ham players on my fantasy team right now, so hopefully that's true.
Are they defenders? Is that where you're going? Is Kilman one of them, or
Kilman is definitely one of them. Yeah.
Okay, so one to look out for from the FPL side, Kilman.
Yeah, I think. I mean, he doesn't have a lot. He's not worth a lot on the FPL site, so I think, and he'll probably be a main starter if he's coming from Wolves. So I think it's a good pickup.
Does Jared Bowen still play in his kind of free roaming role that he's played for the last several seasons under Lopetegui, or does he have to be in a more structured position?
I don't think he has to be in a more structured position.
So you think Jared Bowen's still a good wild card to have?
Yeah, of course. I think he'll move into Lopetegui's going to ask him to take more of like not a center mid role, but like move into that area and basically take control of the ball. And that's another thing that I think Kudus, of course, is a great player, but Ben Rama is more of like basically the person that Lopetegui usually goes with on those wide spots. Someone that doesn't move or doesn't run at the defenders as much, but instead kind of holds the ball, is creative on the ball, and likes to pass it around in the midfield. So I think Ben Rama could have a lot of minutes coming for him this season. Which is something to look forward to in FPL as well.
Interesting. So what goalkeeper wise for Lopetegui, do you think it matters between Fabianski and Areola? You think they'll split time? Do you think one of them's better suited for a system than the other? Because I know a lot of people have Areola in their team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the thing. For other coaches, I think that's, a goalkeeper that is able to play with his feet is very important, but I don't think that's the case for Lopetegui. So yeah, I think he'll probably stick with Areola for the most part, and then use Fabianski in like those cup tournaments or on in between week matches. So I think Areola will definitely be the starting goalkeeper.
Yeah. Good info. Anything else on West Ham before we move on to our final new manager for the season?
No, I think that's it. I mean, it'll be nice to revisit West Ham and see how they're doing around the midseason, because I think they do have a lot of potential to finish in one of those top spots.
Yeah, again, as a Spurs supporter, I hope West Ham are in the bottom half of the table when we have this conversation again. But, I could hate them a lot less if they play, a different style of football, have a different mentality or ethos, whatever, than they have in the past, because I haven't been able to stand watching West Ham play for a long time. So, but anyway, you know what I mean. That biased opinion, all that stuff. Okay, well, let's move on to Brighton and their new manager in Herzler, who is a young guy, right? But first and foremost, Brighton are just weird, right? Like, I mean, it seems like they're playing Moneyball style football, right? Like they're making these signings that are very statistically driven, and I'm sure you can speak volumes to that, but I can't understand what they're doing from the manager side, because we went from Graham Potter to De Zerbi, and then they had this huge falling out with De Zerbi, and now he's gone, and we have this super young guy who I don't really think resembles either De Zerbi or Potter.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be wrong there, but what are your thoughts on this decision?
I think he's probably one of the more interesting managers out of the four that we're covering today.
Okay.
He brings a different style of. I mean, that's the thing. I think in football, there's definitely a common trend in tactics, The difference is in small tweaks in your style of play, and I think that's one thing that Herzler is pretty good at doing. The thing with him is that he likes to play instead. He likes to create an overload in the midfield, which is normal for football today. But instead of inverting his fullbacks, he takes it from another avenue, which is to push one of his center backs into the midfield. And I think that is something that, I mean, not a lot of managers do. Of course, for him, playing with a goalkeeper in the back line is important as well. So if you imagine that he's playing with three center backs, one of them pushes up, and then he has his goalkeeper kind of fill into that role in order to create kind of a diamond in the back in the back to be able to have multiple passing spaces. I think. I mean, I don't remember. I think his goalkeeper with St. Pauli had the fifth most passes on the team in the whole season. So, like, if we're talking about who might get bonus points off just sheer passes, I think I mean, Brighton's the goalkeeper is definitely someone that you should have in mind. I mean, who will start? I don't know.
I was gonna say that was the big question last season because it was Verbruggen, it was Steele, and I think they've signed another guy now. So I don't know who that player is going to be.
I mean, whoever is going to be the starting goalkeeper, that they have to be comfortable on the ball.
I feel like Steele is more comfortable. From what I saw, he was more comfortable on the ball than Verbruggen was. But Verbruggen plays international football at a high degree, and Steele didn't. So there's that. But I always thought Steele was better with his feet.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge component to Herzler's game. I mean, that's the thing, even more than Arne Slot. And it's interesting. I mean, that's the thing. They signed, what's his name, Minte from Newcastle, who's usually a left wing, but in this preseason he's been playing as like a right fullback, kind of right wing back. And
I've got this other fullback too. His name's Valentin Barco, who is like an Estupinian type of player.
Yeah.
So I'm curious who those fullbacks are at the start of the season as well.
That's the thing. Minte usually plays as on the left, and he has him as the right wing back, and he's been doing good. And that's the thing with Herzler, is that during his time at St. Pauli, I mean, his game opened up really wide, and he doesn't have the same scheme of playing with five in the front when he has a high block. He has those wing backs kind of going into those positions and crossing the ball. So I think you can see a lot of points out of Valentin Barco and also Minte. I think I also have Minte on my fantasy team because I mean, from what I've seen in preseason, he'll get a lot of assists and he'll be involved in a lot of the play. So I think Herzler is definitely a very interesting coach. I mean, defensively, if you want defenders that get clean sheets, he's probably not going to be the I mean, Brighton in the past haven't been that team, right?
No, they haven't.
To kind of hone down and kind of get out a 1-0 win, like, I mean, Wolves are, but yeah, if you're looking for attacking players, I think it's important to keep a lookout for this Brighton squad.
Do you think him being the youngest Premier League manager ever is going to impact his play style? Do you think he's going to try and kind of steer into that and be more non-traditional, right? Be more experimental and change some things up and not really care, about keeping clean sheets and things like that? Or do you think he's going to do the opposite and try and kind of prove he belongs and stick to more of the
style? No, I think he's just like a representation of not sticking to the norm, right? I mean, being a manager of an EPL side at 31 is a huge accomplishment. And I mean, if we want to talk about people that kind of actually get to the place they are through sheer merit, I think Herzler is definitely one of those coaches. He was a player maybe I think in the fifth division of
Yeah, I
Germany.
think he was from the Bayern Munich Academy.
He was from
Yeah.
Bayern Munich, but he never played like top football. And that's the thing. I think he really early in his career he knew he wanted to be a manager, and I mean he went for it. And I think he's very ambitious in his playing style, but yeah, I don't see him sticking to or reverting to like the normal kind of playing style that happens in the EPL. I think he's going to be ambitious, and I think Brighton. That's why they brought him on. They're an ambitious team. I mean, De Zerbi is not the most common coach.
He was a pep type guy, De Zerbi. He was from that same school of thought. So I don't know if Herzler has done enough to show that he is in that camp or not. I feel like I said, everybody's a pep. Every manager, he's a manager's manager, mm-hmm. right? Like I said, the whole Bob Dylan thing. But he's super young, and I think he comes from that football manager school, like the game football manager, right? Like he was one of those guys who played it a ton and like honed his skills, at least from the tactical side. He's really good with set pieces, right? So I think there are some players like Lewis Dunk who could really thrive there. Mm-hmm. He's a kind of a set piece stunner. He can hit them, he can score off them on the receiving end. So maybe he thrives. But who is outside of our fullbacks that we've discussed? Who is a nailed on Herzler style player?
That's hard. I mean, I think who the important piece of the squad is going to be who's that center back that pushes into midfields and kind of dictates play. I don't know who that could be. Van Heck, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Herzler is not like super well known. So it's hard to say who is that typical Herzler player. I think he's going to be a breath of fresh air to the league. But I mean, yeah, I have to stick with the fullbacks. I think they're going to be the important part or the important piece of this squad, the fullbacks and that center back that is able to control play in the midfield. I'm hoping that maybe one of their strikers can start racking up goals.
João Pedro, maybe?
João Pedro, yeah. I mean, against Villarreal, he played kind of in the left wing position, which I don't know if that's going to be his main post, but yeah, I mean, I'm excited for this Brighton squad, and hopefully they can get some exciting football going in this league and do good and do well.
Yeah, let me talk to you about a guy where I feel like you can relate to this a little bit. Tell me if I'm wrong, but he liked something so much that he went to school and studied it and then got a job doing it, and that's Matoma. He did his thesis on dribbling, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a really cool in the statistics behind it and all that. How do you think he plays in a Herzler style system?
Dude, I think Matoma is he has to be a starter. I mean, he's great. The guy, he's probably their best player, right? He's probably Brighton's most dangerous winger, and also their more attack-minded player when he's on the ball. I think that's going to be an interesting combo to see how Minta and Matoma kind of coordinate between the two and how they combine play, because they're both very dynamic players. And on that right side, I mean, that's if I'm playing fullback, that's going to be a nightmare for me, So So I think that's going to be an interesting. I mean, I feel that since Minte is going to go down, he's going to play more those overlapping runs. I think Mitoma has to kind of come in a bit more with his play, and if he wants to, he probably won't stay out wide as much. But yeah, it'll be great to see how they understand each other, and if they're able to take on like the strong teams, and the strong fullbacks, and how they're able to beat their markers. I think that's going to be interesting to see.
I think a good thing is the Brighton games will be interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Whether they're conceding 7 goals or scoring 7 goals, they're going to be something to watch. It's not going to be like a Lopetegui who's going to play to probably a 1-0, 1-1, 2-0 game. So Brighton are going to be fun again, which I think is what they were severely lacking kind of towards the end under Zerbi. So I think a fun Brighton is good for the entire league.
Yeah.
Anything more on Brighton and Herzler before we move on to kind of touching on the promoted teams?
I would say that when he was at St. Pauli, 60% of crosses came from the right side, and it seems that he's building up this right side to be more of the attack-minded side for his team.
Keep your eyes out for whoever's playing on the right then, huh?
So yeah, I mean, I think you'll see a lot of play going through Mitoma and also Minte. So yeah,
ones to look out for. All right, well, anything else before we move on?
No, go ahead.
Great. Well, to the promoted teams, we have 2 familiar faces coming back on. We've got Leicester and Southampton, who are doing the championship Premier League yo-yo, just like Fulham and Norwich and all the other recently promoted and relegated teams that we'd love to see come up and go back down. Anything of note here from Leicester and Southampton as far as the way they play and how maybe this season's going to be different, going to keep them up, send them back down?
Yeah, I mean, Southampton has been really busy during the transfer market, I think. I mean, they brought on Lallana. They got Diaz as a left wing from Villarreal. I think these are kind of signs of intent. I mean, Lallana is more of like an experienced-minded midfielder, so maybe he can kind of hone them down. But yeah, I mean, I think it's hard with these newly promoted teams. I mean, it's going to be a tough season for both of them either way. You can't expect too much, but it's just in those marginal differences that maybe they'll be able to make it into another season in the Premier League. I think, I mean, Leicester signed Bonanote, Bobby Reed on a free.
Bobby Reed.
So I think, yeah, they're going for these kind of wing players and attack-minded players. But yeah, I think they'll be fighting relegation. Leicester seems like the more prominent team to kind of stay in the first division, but it's going to be hard for Southampton. I think it's going to be a tough season.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. What about Ipswich Town? What do we think? They haven't been in the Premier League in a long time. They've got an exciting project that they've been building that's carried them into the Premier League. They've got a couple fullbacks that like to get forward and put crosses in the box. What do you think their chances of staying up are? You think they're going right back down, or you think they're going to put up a fight?
I think I mean, I don't think they have really. I mean, from their signings, they just got Delap from Man City. I mean, he's a young striker. It's like an interesting side, but I think it's a very young side that, I mean, I don't know if they'll have the experience to stay up, and I see them going back down. Unfortunately, you always want these newly promoted teams to do as well as they can and hopefully stay in the Prem. But I mean, yeah, I think they don't have a roster that maybe can challenge other teams that are fighting relegation.
Yeah, it's sad because I think the newly promoted teams are what, in my opinion, makes football the best sport in the world. This merit, the side that merit gets you promoted, right? Promotion and relegation, the football pyramid, grassroots teams can go all the way to the top and all that stuff. Like, it broke my heart that Luton Town got relegated last season because I thought they were pretty fun to watch for the most part. They played a really fun style of football. And they gave it a go. You know, they didn't just sit back and let people hammer them. They scored some goals. You know, it sucks. I was really hoping Everton was going to take their place, but like you said, I think it just maybe wasn't in the cards. So do you think these three teams are going to go right back down, or do you think Southampton and Ipswich are going to be joined by like a Nottingham Forest or an Everton this season?
Yeah, I think it's highly likely for Ipswich Town and Southampton to go down. I mean, there is a probability of Leicester staying up, although they haven't really moved much in the transfer market.
They got Harry Winks in the midfield, though. Who do they need, you know?
Who else I mean, not even like Busquets can.
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think for Leicester, it's going to be hard to stay up. Nottingham Forest, maybe. I mean, how well did they do last season? I
think a lot of it is unfortunately going to be dictated by FFP. Again, you know, how the points totalers are going to get doled out, because I think Leicester are going to start in the negatives, right? Yeah. I think they escaped a point deduction going to the championship, but they're going to get hit with one almost immediately as the season started because of the violations in their books from their last season in the Prem.
Well, I guess it depends on the point deduction.
It's unfortunate that that's what it could come down to, but you look at, I mean, Nottingham Forest and Everton were so close last season because of those points deductions, and like I said, it was almost enough for Luton Town to stay up, but just wasn't in the cards. Any players from these three teams that you're looking at? I know Ipswich Town, Leif Davis is among the players people are watching. He's a little expensive, but he gets crosses in the box. Southampton is missing James Ward-Prowse, but they've got some players as well. Leicester has the always interesting Jamie Vardy at the striker position. So,
although, does Jamie Vardy start? I think
I don't think so, man.
Patson Daka is probably the. Yeah. I remember. I think I drafted Patson Daka in like the 4th round in my FPL like 2 years ago or something like that, because I thought he was going to be, you know, the replacement of Jamie Vardy. Yeah. I guess he finally kind of is, but. Yeah, I mean, Delap maybe, because he's coming from Man City, and I think for Ipswich, it'll be good to have someone young in the front, kind of putting pressure on defending teams. But yeah, other than that, I mean, yeah, I think Diaz also from Southampton. I mean, in this preseason, he's done pretty well. I think he's racked up a couple of goals. So, yeah, those from the relegation or the newly promoted sides, I think those are the players that maybe can make a difference and hopefully get a good amount of FPL points this season.
So, Mauricio, let me ask you, what is the thing you're most looking forward to watching in this Premier League season? Who are the players? Who are the teams? The managers? What are you excited to watch as a non-biased observer? You know, what's got you excited?
Yeah, I think the new managers are something to look forward to. I think it changes kind of the dynamic of the league. I mean, we're going to see, I think this also puts pressure on other managers to kind of change their way of thinking, because I mean, you have Pep that kind of is the like you said, the manager's manager. but a lot of these new coaches are coming in with kind of similar philosophies. So it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of switches up his own tactics. I'm interested to see how Aston Villa line up again. I mean, they had a great season last year, so I think that's a team that we're all going to be wondering if they can keep it up for this new season. But
especially playing in Europe, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they have some exciting players like Duran.
Duran, MLS's own Chicago Fire.
Yeah, I actually did not know that he came out.
Oh man, he lit the league up. I watched him a couple times, but I mean, he was fast and he was good. When he came over, I knew he was going to get. If he could get on the field, I knew he was going to make his mark, and he did. Man, every time he stepped on the pitch,
yeah,
he had a goal or he got damn close. He may not have gotten the most time, but yeah, I think he'll shine this season.
I mean, he's a young player. I mean, I don't know how much he's gonna actually replace Watkins, but I mean, if he gets minutes, I think he'll be great. Another team, I think Fulham are going to be kind of interesting to see. I mean,
Smith Rowe,
see how he
got a goal in his first appearance. Yeah,
kind of transition.
I've got him in my fantasy team. Sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, I also do have him in my fantasy team because I think he'll be kind of that go-to player, you know. Although I don't know where that leaves Andres.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I like Fulham. I like Leno coming from Arsenal. I know is weird, but I like him as a keeper. He's been my team for the last 2 seasons, and he's always done well. I think he's pretty stalwart back there. And you know, I really liked Muniz last season as a striker. I mean, he just watched him before he kind of broke out. You were just like, this guy's going to score any second. Like he could score at any minute. Anytime he gets the ball, could result in a goal. So I'm excited to see if they can carry that momentum on through the season.
Yeah. I mean, they have quality players. That's the thing. I don't know how they'll do, but I mean, it seems like they have a project in mind, and can they execute? I don't know, but
how do you think they're going to do without their captain, Tim Ream, St. Louis's own? Going to Charlotte.
I mean, that's definitely a huge loss for them. But I mean, they'll probably find someone to cover his position. I think they just bought Jorge Cuenca from Villarreal, so we'll see if he's able to live up to Tim Ream's glorious
legacy.
Yeah, there you go. But also, I mean, he's young. He's 24 years old, so I mean, it's going to be big shoes to fill. But I mean, I think it's possible, you know, and even with someone that young, it'll be interesting to see if Cuenca can kind of bring on this youthful side in Fulham.
I'm amazed Robinson is still at Fulham. I know Liverpool were looking at him a while last season, but I feel like he is the ideal fullback for a lot of these managers that we're talking about, and like Maresca, and not that Chelsea need any more players, but you'd think someone would have picked him up because he is so dynamic moving forward. He's good on the ball. His end product is not great, and I think maybe that's where he's lacking the most on those crosses in the box. Yeah. But he takes up all the right positions. He's fast. I think he's going to play really well this season. He's one that I'm looking at in my back line.
And honestly, it's kind of I like it when a small time team. I mean, Fulham is. I mean, they're in the EPL, so they're not that small, but like they're able to maintain players like this and then build around them. Because I think, I mean, it's kind of sad that a lot of times, you know, players leave small clubs and
look at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I actually I like that they've been able to keep Robinson in their squad, and hopefully he can play an important role in having Fulham actually, you know, gain one of those main positions at the top half of the table.
Well, speaking of squads, I know, Mauricio, you typically play FPL draft, but you've prepared an FPL team to compete in the free hit FPL league this season. Why don't you give us your latest draft there, and I'll read off Chris's after that.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking.
Okay. So I'll read out my main 11 players. So I picked Saf for the goalkeeping position. I think Wolves, are a defensive-minded side.
Okay.
So I did not know about the bonus points. About pass completions being one of the metrics for the bonus points. If I did,
there's so many metrics in there, man. Let me tell you, you should dig into it sometime and see if you can understand it. Yeah.
So in my back line, I have Trent. I think he'll be great for Liverpool. I mean, he's going to play in that inverted fullback role, so I think he'll be on the ball a lot. Vardiol, because I mean, if you don't have a Man City defender, like what are you doing? Then I also have Kilman and Trippier. Kilman, obviously, because Lopetegui holds more of a defensive-minded side. Trippier, he was great at the beginning of last season. I don't remember if towards the end he kind of calmed down with the amount of points that he was getting, but I mean, from what I remember, he was great. Then in the midfield, I have Minte, Smith Rowe, Salah, and Gordon. I think these are all like attack-minded midfielders, and Smith Rowe might be, that midfielder that starts shining, and that's one that you would want early on in the season. And then up top, I have Haaland, of course, and then Solanke.
Of course.
Solanke.
All right. Yeah, that's how you're going to line up for the first?
Yeah, because he was great at Bournemouth and now at Tottenham. I mean, I think
we've got a great history of ruining strikers, though. Come on.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't want to miss out on like a great striker,
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, maybe he can finally replace Harry Kane, right?
Finally, yeah. It was funny because you see all the tweets yesterday because we had that preseason game against Bayern that we were talking about earlier, and Kane didn't lift the trophy, but everybody was saying Kane saw the field at Tottenham Stadium before Kane's replacement saw the field at Tottenham Stadium. It's been over like a year and a half, so all those things are very fun. I agree with you on Smith Rowe. I think he, and this may be a bold statement, could be a Cole Palmer-esque player for them.
Yeah.
I think he brings that type of mentality if he can stay healthy. He's young. I think he's confident. Yeah. He scored on his debut, so I think there's some good signs here. Don't quote me on that, but could be Cole Palmer-esque.
Now, if Smith Rowe doesn't produce, I'm going to be like, Jace.
It's all your fault. Well, if it helps you, I have him in my team too. I've got Leno, starting keeper, as I mentioned earlier, Henderson as the backup. My back line, Pedro Porro, Alexander-Arnold, and Guardiola. Again, Alexander-Arnold and Guardiola for the same reasons you said earlier. I like Pedro Porro. I think he can score. I think Tottenham will keep clean sheets as long as no one as long as we don't give away any set pieces. We're super vulnerable on set pieces, but I like Pedro Porro a lot. I like Destiny Udogie more, but he's still coming back from injury. So we'll see how that goes. If we keep on if we hold on to Jed Spence and he gets some minutes, maybe there's some merit there too. He'll be cheap.
Was great for Tottenham in the starting half of the season, no?
Yeah, and I think he was good at the end too. He's always good for a shot on target. Great for a potential assist. He just had that knee issue, and I'm a little concerned. He got into the game towards the end yesterday, so I think he's healthy again. But we'll see what those two starting fullbacks are against Leicester here next weekend, and maybe I'll switch him out. But I'm starting with Pedro Porro because I'm more convinced he's nailed on than Udogie at the moment. My midfield is a lot like yours. I've got Gordon. I've got Garnacho because of yesterday's goal. I think Man United are shit.
Yeah.
But Garnacho is the type of player who has all the confidence in the world. And again, like Cole Palmer, he'll find the goal, and he's super cheap. So I like Garnacho. I like Gibbs White at Nottingham Forest. Same type of player. I think most of the play is going to go through him, especially if Wood continues his run of form like he did at the end of last season. And I've got Jota right now in the midfield along with Smith Rowe. Jota, Diaz, Salah, they're all interchangeable.
Yeah.
I needed some money, so I went with Jota, but maybe I'll switch it out to Diaz, just depending on.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jota is a great pick because like he might, I mean, he might not play in like a midfield role, right? And that's what you want in fantasy is to get players that don't really play in their fantasy positions.
That's right.
So yeah, I think Jota is a great pick, and maybe I'll switch out one of my players for him. Actually,
even if he doesn't start, I think Jota's the type of player that can come on and score a goal.
Yeah.
Which you miss out on a couple points, but I'm okay. He's a lot like Martinelli, and that like he doesn't need 90 minutes to get a goal. He comes on, he can score in 5.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with Jota. And again, I have Smith Rowe as well, but they start against United, so I've got him on the bench. My top striking line, I've got Havertz to cover my Arsenal side. I've got Haaland, of course, because I feel like you just have to.
You just have to, yeah.
Even when he's injured, he's scoring a hat trick against Chelsea. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like a liability if you don't have.
It is, yeah.
If you don't have Haaland in your team,
And then I've got Wood as my third striker right now because they were against Bournemouth at home, first game of the season. Easily swappable with Muniz and like João Pedro, a couple of those strikers. But we'll see how that first game goes. I've got Barco right now because he's cheap from Brighton. I don't know if he's going to stay or if he's going to play, but I'm okay with him not playing. And then my last defender, I've got Aït-Nouri from Wolves, who also likes to get up the field and play. But again, they're playing Arsenal, so that's kind of he's on my bench to start. I'm thinking of captaining Havertz against Wolves to start the season. So yeah, power moves.
Yeah, captaining an Arsenal player.
I know it's emotional hedging. It's like with the gambling. If I have an Arsenal player, it hurts less when they score.
Yeah, that's true.
I refuse to get Saka though. I still don't think he's good, but whatever.
That's a bold statement. Not
yeah, I know. It's a good thing no one listens to this podcast. Otherwise, I get a ton of hate tweets in my inbox. Chris's team, though, he's got Flecken starting in goal. Henderson is his replacement as well. Back line of Alexander-Arnold, Michaelenko from Everton, Konza from West Ham, which I think is a great pick, and he's got Barco as well, and Robinson. So he's a Fulham supporter. Also, Nkunku, Rogers, Eze, and Salah in the midfield. He's also got Smith Rowe. Okay, so that could be a pretty popular pick. It sounds like that move from Smith Rowe, and then he's got a striking trio of Haaland, Muniz, and Isak, and he's got the captain's armband on Isak home for Southampton the first game of the season. So
yeah, that's a good player to captain actually. And
yeah, Isak's
considering the opponent. I mean. But always those few couple of games are a bit wonky, right?
Yeah, I think the opening 3 games of the FPL season are like the start of like a marathon. You got all these runners kind of in this big group, and everybody's just like fighting each other out. And you kind of once after 3 games, you kind of separate into your pools. But there are a lot of new rules in FPL this season, right? You can carry up to 5 free transfers now. You don't burn a transfer on using a chip. There's a new mystery chip coming. We're not going to have near as many double or single game weeks because of the way they changed the schedule. So it's not a new game, but it's kind of a new game this season, which I think is fun. So you have to rely a bit less on your tricks, i.e., saving up that free hit for the double game weeks, triple captains for the double game weeks, bench boosts, all that. So it'll be interesting. Do you think you're going to play a little more traditional FPL, or you think you're just going to stick with draft this season?
I think I'll probably stick with my draft because I mean that's the thing. I think to a certain point, it's the normal FPL kind of can get kind of repetitive. Everybody kind of turns out with the same team.
The meta, it's really hard to go against.
Yeah, and I think FPL drafts kind of forces you to to think ahead. To think at like maybe like you said, they're double game weeks, so maybe I'll pick up I don't know, just this random center back from I don't know Wolves or something like that, just to have the possibility of getting a clean sheet, And I think it's more methodical in that way.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've always wanted to play draft just because I think it would be fun to not go against the same team every week. You know what I mean? Like, at least the 3 teams we just listed off were all pretty different for the most part, which was nice. Some of us went with Salah, some went with Havertz, things like that. So I think the pricing structure that they released in FPL this season will drastically change kind of that meta team that everybody was playing at the end of last season. So it's good. We'll see how it shakes out, but yeah. So that kind of brings us to the end. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up here, Mauricio?
No, I mean, yeah. Thank you for having me on. Yeah,
absolutely, man. And I'm hoping we can do this again with your counterpart, Ben. Even though he's an Arsenal supporter, I'm hoping we can have you guys back on the show here, either the first international break or the halfway mark, and we can do a bit of a review of what we talked about here. But tell the people what you're working on, what you got going on right now, Mauricio, where they can find you, all that stuff.
Yeah, so so we're working on right now Offside, Onside, like we said in the beginning of the podcast. Right now we're transitioning into more, of course, season oriented and more like deep analytics for our articles. So far, we've only have done articles that are more on a game-to-game basis. But hopefully now you guys can see some of the output that we're trying to produce that will be more analytical and on these broad ideas. So you can find us on Substack. We have a page there. I'm not completely sure what I think it's Offside, Onside.
We'll link it in the show description. Don't worry.
We also have a Twitter page, so we can link that in the description as well. But yeah, if you guys also like the Serie A and also La Liga, then tune in to the articles that we're going to produce. But of course, we'll have information on the EPL because that's the reigning league. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks again for joining us, Mauricio. Thanks everybody for listening. Don't forget to join our league for the Free Hit Pod. It's ZDTLNG. Please rate, review, and subscribe to our show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows. Follow us on X, Instagram, all the socials at FPL_Free Hit Pod. And join us next week as we recap the first week of the season. And I can't wait. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.